This is ABC7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC7. We always ask experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and today Meta is launching a new program to support AAPI-owned small businesses in a whole new way. We'll hear from the Bay Area marketing executive who helped jumpstart Meta Prosper. And later, we'll connect with the Bay Area-born producer of a new docu-series called East Meets West. It takes viewers on a journey along the Silk Road with a legendary Nat Geo photographer. But first, reaction continues to pour in on the Supreme Court's leaked draft opinion, showing the justices may be poised to overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade decision that gave women across America the right to reproductive freedom. Now, one angle that's often not explored is the potential impact striking down Roe could have on families looking to adopt. Hadar Aviram is not only a UC Hastings law professor, hence following the case closely, but she's also an adoptive mother. And she's just released a powerful new essay on her concerns based on her experience. Professor Aviram, thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Kristen.
Look, so one common argument you hear is if abortions were banned, there would be more births and more babies to adopt. Now, that sounds like it should be a welcome thing for people who want to adopt, right? But what do you think about that?
I think that anybody who's experienced adoption, and I'm an adoptive mom through an ethical open adoption through an adoption agency, and knows a little bit about the adoption market and how it works, should be very, very worried about the prospect of limiting abortion rights. Why? And the reason for that is as follows. Generally speaking, people who are struggling with unwanted pregnancies have very, very hard choices to make as it is about whether they can parent, and very often they're not in a position where they can parent, or whether they're going to carry the pregnancy to term. And oftentimes, if somebody decides to terminate the pregnancy, it is because they are not in a situation where they can even carry the pregnancy to term, either because they have to keep it secret from family, maybe from an abusive partner, maybe from their mom, maybe they still live at home, maybe they're teenagers. There could be a lot of reasons why they can't really carry the pregnancy to term. They might be in situations in which even being pregnant could be unhealthy. They might be around smoking and alcohol and controlled substances. They might be exposed to abuse. There could be a lot of reasons for that. Now, if somebody is looking to place their child for an adoption, which is already an extremely hard decision to make, and you're making it because there's no way you can parent yourself, there's going to be an interview with a social worker at which you might have to disclose facts about your pregnancy that are going to make it more difficult to place your child. As part of our adoption journey, we met many prospective adoptive parents, and people are really worried about medical backgrounds and things like that involving birth moms. I can see how the lack of trust and the lack of honesty, that diminishing this even further is going to really, really damage the possibility to trust each other in a process that relies so much on empathy and on the ability to really tell each other things the way that they are. And this worries me a great deal.
And this is a picture of you and your beautiful son. When I hear you talk, I can't help but think, did you form some of these opinions based on your own journey? Were these some of the things that your son's birth mother experienced?
So, of course, the birth parents of our amazing son are wonderful people, and the dilemmas and tribulations and difficulties that they've experienced in their lives are theirs to tell. And it's not a story for me to share, not here or anywhere else. But I can say that we adopted our son out of state, in a state that is very hostile to abortion. And it's hard to think that that doesn't play a role when I remember us driving to pick up our son from the hospital and being surrounded by billboards that are making, demonizing abortion and talking about how bad it is. I'm pretty sure that you can't really live in a place that's that hostile and feel like you have a lot of options. And consider the fact that birth parents already have options that are very, very limited. They're already oftentimes in situations where their bargaining power in the agreement with adoptive parents are limited by the fact that, let's face it, a lot of times this is about economic constraints. A lot of times this is about being much younger than the prospective adoptive parents. So there's so much in this situation that's already imbalanced that taking away a meaningful choice makes it even more imbalanced. Now, the thing, of course, is that when I look at my son, I'm thinking, I'm just so glad that he's in the world. It's such a blessing.
Say, Professor Aviram, because in your essay, and this part really stood out, you wrote, "I have been beyond ecstatic that the world has been blessed with my son, a sparkling star of a boy, bright, empathetic, loving, friendly, kind, athletic, funny, multi-talented, spirited, lively." And some people would ask, isn't that exactly why he needed to be born, had the right to be born?
So of course I'm delighted my son is in the world. He's amazing and he's the light of my life. The thing is that oftentimes the conversation about abortion is reduced to this kind of abstract notion of, is all life sacred? Is this really about when life begins? And my sense is that if the conversation really was about when life begins, then there would be a lot more effort on the conservative side of the map to support these precious lives after they are born. So it seems like all of the concern about preserving lives happens so long as the life is in utero. And the minute the child is born, there's no parental leave, there's no childcare options, there's no affordable healthcare for everybody. You know, there are no high quality educational options available to people that they can afford. It's just not a situation that's conducive to nurturing that precious life afterwards. And that is what worries me about the disingenuousness of making this about, you know, this philosophical when does life begin thing.
What did you see in terms of support for the birth mother? I don't want to get too personal, but when you mentioned seeing those billboards as you were driving to pick up your son, billboards that demonize, you know, maybe the mother would internalize it and feel she did something awful for, one, getting pregnant, and two, giving up her child. And I can only imagine afterwards she may need mental health support. Is that available?
Any choice that you make about parenting, about not parenting, is a choice that's really fraught. And it's really hard to talk about which of these choices, to terminate the pregnancy, to carry the pregnancy to term, to bond with your child and then place them for adoption, like any of these, it's hard to predict, and it's going to play differently for different people. But we certainly need a lot more support in that situation. And this is another thing that I flagged in the essay, which is that a lot of the pro-abortion side, the pro-choice side of the argument is about, let's allow women who find themselves in a situation where they're experiencing an unwanted pregnancy, let's allow them to move on with their lives. If the right-wingers on the map were really genuine about the idea that adoption is the solution, they would invest the same effort in putting birth moms on their feet so that they can get their lives on track. And I'm not talking just about a few conversations with a social worker, which I have to say, in cases of adoptions that are facilitated by private agencies, are done by, you know, really good, conscientious, ethical people, but it's really limited to what the agency is offering because the government is not supporting a lot of this. I'm talking college money, I'm talking jobs, I'm talking really help somebody who's experienced such a disruptive and derailing event in their life get their lives back on track. Let's facilitate that. If the conversation is not about that, then maybe this is really not so much about defending life, but about something else, which is punishing women for the decision to have sex.
All right, I'm going to ask you to take off your mom hat for a second and put on the law professor hat. And that is in the confirmation hearings, or going back to the Supreme Court and this possible impending decision that may overturn Roe. In the confirmation hearings, the newest justices seem to suggest that Roe was settled law, like decided, precedent, but Justice Alito's draft seems to say it's not, and that the original reasoning was flawed. Is it or is it not? Help us look at that and whether, you know, settled law could be reversed when we change as a society.
I think it's hard to talk about the rhetoric in the decision without talking about the politics behind it. We know that the last few appointments to the Supreme Court were appointed under the assumption that this is what was going on. This was a question that was tackled in the confirmation hearing from a variety of perspectives. The question of whether rights have to be held out in the Constitution to be rights or whether they can be implied from other rights is basically what Justice Alito's draft seems to revolve around. And it seems to be the argument that if the right is not enshrined in the Constitution as a right to abortion, then it's not a real right. This throws into question a lot of other things that people consider essential to living in a society that embraces and includes everybody, that are also not spelled out in the Constitution, because the Constitution was written in the 18th century by men of their times without the sensibilities, the values, and the technologies that we now have. And it reflects those positions. So many things that we now take for granted and that are precious for us are not enshrined in the Constitution and are now really endangered if this decision indeed becomes law.
All right, this is our last question. I got to go, but I have to ask you this because, as we know, if Roe is struck down, that does not mean abortion is banned across the country. It means it's kicked back to the states, and the states will decide. But does the Supreme Court have the ability, if the right case came up, to actually be able to ban abortion throughout the country?
So the issue with constitutional rights is that the Supreme Court can always set a minimum of rights. You can always kind of get into a state that only offers you the very basic package of rights without anything that the Supreme Court doesn't offer. We're already seeing that trend in various states that have legislation that's ready to go into effect the second that this decision becomes law. And then there are states that will offer you more, that'll give you the platinum package. And I suspect that what's going to happen now is that states like, for example, California, which is now looking at codifying the right to abortion, and other states that offer this kind of platinum package of enhanced rights are going to become a destination for people who will now have to travel farther to make a choice that was more easily available to them before.
All right. UC Hastings law professor and adoptive mother, Hadar Aviram, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up next, we'll talk to a Bay Area marketing executive who helped Meta, that's the Facebook parent company, launch a new brand to help AAPI businesses. We'll be right back. All right, we'll be right back, folks. May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Silicon Valley tech giant Meta, that's Facebook's parent company, is launching a new program to support small AAPI-owned businesses. It's called Meta Prosper. The new initiative will focus on providing content, training resources, and events in 6 different languages on its Instagram and Facebook pages. Joining us now to talk about this is Meta's Global Head of Social Marketing, Eric Toda. Eric, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, so I can't wait to talk about this idea. Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg today said the pandemic was actually a driving force in the creation of Meta Prosper. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as we've been tracking the pandemic, we've noticed that Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander small businesses have been disproportionately affected in the road to recovery. They've been targeted in attacks, which obviously ABC has covered widely, and actually a strong percentage believe that they actually won't survive past this year because of those attacks and because of the xenophobia that continues to be cast upon them. So we took it upon ourselves to build a program that could support them, help them scale, and provide them ways to succeed.
All right. So I understand you're creating communities on social platforms, right? But talk about exactly how, what are the tools MetaProsper offers?
No, absolutely. One of the things that we noticed last year during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, when we had a celebration and content, was that there was a heavy appetite for content and trainings in language. Now, my mother's from the Philippines. English is her second language, and so that became very natural to me. Of what if we created content in Tagalog? How would her and her family and her friends start businesses, because now they have training that speaks to them and with them. And so we are translating all content specific to support small businesses in 6 languages like Tagalog, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and we will be offering
and Chinese
small
and Hindi.
business support. And Chinese and Hindi, that's right. Yeah. I didn't want to list it all out because it would go too long. But
that's
yes,
okay. That's okay. Important. In addition to that kind of support, I think you guys also offer these businesses training with Gold House, right? And for folks who don't know Gold House, it's a collective, a nonprofit of Asian American Pacific Islander leaders with a lot of knowledge. What kind of training?
Yeah, these trainings will really focus on how to digitize your business, take it into the 21st century. How do you use programs and platforms like Meta's to scale your business to reach new audiences? And better yet, how do you continue to facilitate community so that you don't just reach out to people and engage with them, but you bring them back for retention as well. And so this is extremely important business skills that we want to make sure that they're accessible to our community.
Why is this cause and starting MetaProsper so important to you?
My grandparents were small business owners in San Francisco, Pacific Heights to be exact. They owned a dry cleaning business after they were let out of the internment camps in the 1940s. Before that, they were successful farmers in Central California. So as small business owners running a dry cleaning business, one of the biggest things that I remember asking my grandfather before he passed away is, what did you wish you had, as you're building the business? And he always told me he always wished that he had more of him to go stand on corners to bring people in. And so I wish we had the technology that we do now, to give to small businesses like my grandparents and many other people's grandparents and parents as well. And so it's so important to me. It's a very personal cause, and really, being Asian American, I want to make more change and make it tangible and make it material, and MetaProsper is that outcome.
Essentially, you're creating online villages for them, right? All right, that's fantastic. So where can people find out more?
I highly encourage all of you to go to Instagram.com/MetaProsper, Facebook.com/MetaProsper, or our website, Facebook.com/Prosper with us. We encourage you to send us messages and let us know how we're doing. I think the biggest thing for us is, as we're building community, it's a two-way conversation. So let us know how we're doing. What do you want to see more of? Because we're here for you and we're building it with you.
All right. Meta's Global Head of Social Marketing, Eric Toda, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Good to meet you too.
Coming up next, we'll chat with the producer of a new documentary series honoring AAPI Heritage Month. We'll be right back. All right, folks, stick around. Be right back. California is often described as a place where East meets West. East Meets West is also the name of a new documentary series just in time for this Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The series takes viewers on a visual journey along the Silk Road through the camera lens of legendary National Geographic photographer Michael Yamashita.
When I first got the idea to do the Marco Polo route, I wanted to do it for the sheer adventure of it. I started with an open mind. I decided I was going to use his book, like my guidebook, and travel the route and make up my own mind as to whether he made it or not.
From Venice to Shangri-La to the Great Wall, Yamashita's work and adventure are the focus of this 9-part series produced by former CNN anchor and Bay Area native Farlan Chang. Farlan grew up in Walnut Creek, but he joins us now from where the Marco Polo story begins, in Venice. Good afternoon, or I guess good evening to you, Farlan. Hello.
Good evening, Kristen. Yes, 9 hours ahead of you here in Venice. Indeed, Venice is the beginning of the Silk Road from west to east. And Michael Yamashita has devoted his life to following the greatest explorers who traveled along the Silk Road. Marco Polo, you saw the trailer to our first episode just there. The greatest overland explorer. And Michael also followed Zheng He, China's greatest admiral, along the so-called maritime Silk Road. And so that is a big part of our series of traveling around and retracing the footsteps of these great explorers.
All right, in fact, let's hear from Michael himself.
We are all environmentalists, and of course, I am very concerned about the environment and protecting what we have here. In telling stories about the Far East, I can tell you that much of what I photographed you can't shoot again.
Wow. You know, Michael, people who know him know he's an icon. He's captured some of the world's most memorable images of the Far East. And, you know, people know that he has, 2 million followers on Instagram. What they don't know, though, is, you know, what he touched on there is just that so much of what he captured over the years has changed. Farlan, can you talk about the urgency to these stories being told now due to the changing climate and environment?
Absolutely. You know, Michael is, of course, one of the greatest photographers of all time, a legendary storyteller for National Geographic. And he is an ambassador of Nat Geo's motto, which is to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world. And he has had the privilege of capturing so much of what sadly is disappearing, so much along the Silk Road. And he's devoted his career to helping to advance that mission of preserving what once was. And as you heard, he is always looking for those things which we are taking for granted and trying to call to action for all of us to be able to do our part in conserving and preserving what we have, which is the one shared planet.
What to you is the most important thing about kind of sharing these stories of East and West and kind of bridging the understanding through looking at the experience via both perspectives? Why is that important?
Well, you know, I think when you look at those two explorers, Marco Polo and Zheng He, I mean, Michael likes to say that if Marco Polo was alive today, he would be a National Geographic photographer or writer. He would be educating people. He would be showing the world, presenting the world, just as Marco Polo did, helping the West understand the East. And in this day and age, we are certainly going through lots of misunderstanding and division and polarization and fragmentation. And whatever we can do to educate, to inform, to help people to people exchange and learn about each other's history and culture and way of life, that is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much here to discover. I mean, sad to say, as a Chinese American, I actually did not know about Zheng He and his travels and how his expeditions, just like Marco Polo's, really changed Europe and influenced Europe in so many ways. It caused so much more prominent change in China and also the Western world. So this is fantastic to learn that. But also for you photography buffs, this series also contains a masterclass from Michael, right?
Indeed. You know, Michael has a huge following on Instagram, around 1.8 million fans. And you can see for yourself at Yamashita Photo on Instagram as well as on Facebook. His photos show his body of work over the course of 40 years. And not only do people have a chance to appreciate and what he has captured along the Silk Road and the facts and the figures and the history, but people also have a chance to learn from the master himself. And in this day and age, we all have our smartphones and we're all taking pictures. And so one of our episodes is indeed a master class from the master, people learning about the way in which Michael is using lighting and composition and all these other secrets of the trade, if you will.
Well, that's great. I'm glad he's revealing those secrets because Michael's work is terrific. He is from San Francisco, by the way, folks. There's another local tie for you. You should check it out. The website is www.eastmeetswestfilm.com. All right, congratulations, Farland. Thank you so much. We'll take a short break and be right back.
Thank you so much.
All right, Farland, we actually have 2 more minutes to finish up on Facebook Live. We're done with the TV portion of this, but maybe you can run folks through briefly the 9 chapters, the 9 different episodes and what they entail.
Absolutely. If we have a chance to show the trailer, we have a 3-minute trailer, and you can actually show that while we're speaking. We, of course, are going to start with those 2 great explorers, Marco Polo, the world's greatest overland explorer, Zheng He, China's greatest admiral, the one that Michael, you must like to say many people have never even heard of. And then we go on to other parts of the Silk Road, Shangri-La, the so-called Tea Horse Road to Lhasa, Tibet, as well as the Great Wall from beginning to end. In addition, we are looking at his masterclass, his top tips, and we're also going on the road and joining him on assignment and seeing the way in which one of Nat Geo's most celebrated and acclaimed photographer works. So those are some of the topics. Oh, yes. In New York City, by the way, New York City Flying High, which happens to be where Mike lives now. So we get a chance to see aerial photography and how to capture landscapes from high above.
Nice. A little bit off the Silk Road there in New York City, but that's fantastic as well. I mean, watching those pictures, looking at those pictures and your video really makes me want to go there. And I feel like one of Nat Geo's, missions has always been to kind of create this sense of wonder in us and adventure in us and wanting to get to know our world and not just through these pictures, but through them luring us into actually wanting to go there and learn the culture,
People say travel, life is like a book, and people who don't travel, they only read one page. People also like to say...
On those words of wisdom, I got to get out of here. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Farland. Congratulations on East Meets West. Thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers today. We'll be here every weekday at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. World News Tonight with David Muir is coming up next. Have a great day.